Ladies and gentlemen, the panel session will be start in 1 minute sharp. 1 minute sharp. So please be seated. Okay. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your MC, Natalie Chen. I hope you're all well rested and looking forward to the upcoming panel session. The panel session 4 will be centered on global research collaboration and networking. It's a pleasure for us to invite Dr. Johan Zhou, the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Science and Technology, as the moderator of the session. For years, she has contributed greatly to the development of science and technology in Taiwan. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Johan Zhou to the stage with a round of applause.
So, good afternoon, distinguished partner, distinguished guest, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Um, Thank you very much for sharing your time with us. I am Yu Hanzhou. I'm Vice Minister of Ministry of Science and Technology. So on behalf of Ministry of Science and Technology, it's my great pleasure to be here to welcome you to Taiwan and to join today's event. Okay. Um, This section is section 4, the significant panel section, focus on global research cooperation and networking. So my job is to host this session and introduce our distinguished speaker. Okay. So our panelists, our speakers will share their experience and knowledge of cross-national research cooperation and build academic networks between nations and organizations, especially the key factors of establishing connection and getting good performance. So our 6 speakers from North American, from Europe, from Oceania, and from Asia. Okay. So I would introduce them first, and each of the panelists will have a 10 or to 15 minutes to brief the present first, and then we will have a 10 minutes for all the participants, an opportunity to discuss. And please feel free to share your suggestion, your comment, your idea at that time. So now it's a great pleasure to introduce the first speaker. Okay, the first speaker we have Dr. Vakarova. Okay, President Czech Science Foundation, Czech Republic, from Czech Republic. Okay, her area of expertise are nuclear physics and particle physics. Is there anything missing? Our speaker will edit more content and introduce to us. Yeah, okay. Dr. Vakarova also served 6 years as a member of evaluation panel of ERC, European Research Council. And she's going to share her experience and knowledge of international research cooperation with us. So let's welcome our first speaker, Dr. Alice Vakarova, please. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you for such a nice introduction. And I would like also to thank organizers of this nice event to invite me and so I have a pleasure to be invited to such a very interesting event. So ladies and gentlemen, I would like to speak something about international research cooperation. So I will, in the beginning, I will compare old days and nowadays, but everybody knows, of course, what I will speak about. So in old days, a single researcher or a small group did everything on their own. So he collected specimens, built the instruments and maintained them, provided modeling and analysis, but also published the papers. So it changed dramatically during next days, years. So nowadays, in most cases, one does not everything inside a group or a laboratory. Somebody else builds the instruments and runs them, provides modeling. Technologies are highly specialized and costly, so only few institutions have the necessary expertise and tools in one place or one laboratory. So it is clear that it needs some broader cooperation at national level, but also at international level. So I will speak about my own experiments. So I'm old enough to remember that in 70 I worked in my diploma in the national group in Prague, and we work as a 4 scientists only. Yes, so and we published the paper and so on. So later on in 70s, I worked in Joint Institute of Nuclear Research in Dubna. It was in former Soviet Union town not far from Moscow. And there were about 30 scientists from 7 different laboratories in one experiment. So later on in 80s, still I was in Joint Institute of Nuclear Research in Dubna, and I took part in another experiment with about 40 scientists from 6 different countries. But then the situation dramatically changed. In the 80s, I participated in the experiment at Hera Electron Proton Collider at the DESY laboratory in Hamburg, Germany. And there were about 300 scientists from 28 laboratories all over the world. So, and as you probably know, nowadays there are experiments at LHC CERN. There are 4 experiments, such a huge, where are about 3,000 scientists from 310 laboratories, and you can see them in the hall, and it's really overcrowded. So what are pillars of success of this cooperation? So it should be some convergent research, complementary expertise and technology beneficial for all partners. And it is also important to have bilateral exchanges at different levels. So what is our experience in the Czech Science Foundation? So our Czech Science Foundation was established in '93. So last year we celebrated 25th anniversary celebration of our existence, and we fund basic research. The system is bottom up, and we obtain funds directly from the government. So we had cooperation with we have cooperation with Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft from 2006, then with Ministry of Science and Technology, and our cooperation started at November 2008, and we have very good relations. There were many projects proposed, and from these 32 projects were supported, and all were successfully finished. So this is our experience with the Ministry of Science and Technology. So, but okay. No. So we have also cooperation with Austrian Austrian funding agency, and from the last year we have also some cooperation with Russian Foundation for Basic Research and the Brazilian Sao Paulo Research Foundation. So it is something which is new. we would like also to extend our collaboration to other countries. So, you know probably something about the European Union, so only briefly. So there are about 500 million people from 28 countries with a single market, so free movement of people, goods, services, and capital. It represents 7% of the world's population, 24% of world expenditure on research, and 32 high impact publications and patent applications. So, and Europe devotes 80 billion euros for research and innovation funding program in 2014 to 2020. So, and what is Science Europe? Science Europe is a European association which represents the interests of major public research, performing and research funding organization. So it was founded in 2011 and it is based in Brussels and uses its expertise to advocate and shape science policy and funding. Science Europe is 37 member organization from 28 European countries, which are among the most important public research organizations funding and performing scientific research in Europe today. So we are preparing for the extension of our cooperation within Science Europe. And we will think about the cooperation which will be based on the lead agency principle. So it means that two collaborating agencies are decide what agency will provide evaluation, and countries which will be included to that program are written there. And as a pilot project, we developed multilateral collaboration of grant agencies in the region of Central Europe, so-called CEUS, which includes Austria, Poland, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic. And the memorandum of understanding was signed in June 2019 in Vienna. And first call we expect in 2020. So we are looking forward to this new kind of collaboration within this CEUS initiative, but also we are looking forward to development of this program, which will be organized by Science Europe and which will give us even larger opportunity to cooperate with other European countries. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Makarova. Okay, and let me introduce the second speaker. Dr. Thierry Damerhaval is a child French National Research Agency, France. His expertise is microbiology. He began his career at the Pasteur Institute in the earlier stage, right? In 1993, you joined in the French CA. Yeah, it's also the director of CA. And the most important is he is an advisor on biological and medical research to the French minister and the prime minister in charge of research. Okay, and Dr. Thierry Damerhaval will give us a speech about looking back over a decade of ANR most collaboration. Okay, that's welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to check the time. Okay. So, Mrs. Minister, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I want first to wish a very good anniversary to MOST, to congratulate MOST for the organization of this meeting and to thank you for this invitation. I will say a few words about the National Research Agency and the history of this partnership with MOST since Taiwan was indeed the first international partnership of ANR, established just 1 or 2 years after the creation of the agency in 2006. So ANR is a French research funding agency, and our missions are to fund and promote research through competitive funding of research projects in all fields of science, covering both basic and applied research project carried out by a research team from research organizations, universities, companies, large companies as well as SMEs. And we support research mainly on an investigator-driven basis. But we also implement the priorities decided at the level of the government. Our annual budget is today about 740 million euros, and we are lucky because it increased about 5% a year. And besides this annual budget, there is something very specific in France, which is called investment for the future. Again, it's not in the annual budget. It's something, it's a kind of fund of 30 billion euros over 15 years, just to fund the evolution of university, a large partnership between academic research and private company. Some commitments. I want to mention these commitments not only because they are strong commitments for ANR, but also because they are, I think, major issues and challenges for every research organization today. Dr. Valkarova talked about Science Europe. These different commitments are largely discussed between the member of Science Europe with several working groups and a very useful agreement between research organizations. Scientific integrity, of course, and we are completely in line with the Declaration of Singapore. There is a national charter, there is a specific charter for deontology and scientific integrity and ethics at the level of the agency with someone who is specifically responsible for this question. Gender, we have a gender plan. First, of course, ensuring that gender equity is completely integrated in our everyday practice, I would say, within the agency, but also that gender biases are avoided in the evaluation of a research project, and that gender is taken into account in the conduct of research project. And we spoke a lot about intelligence, artificial intelligence today, and gender is a real issue in AI research. And of course, open access. We are completely involved in open science. The open access of publication resulting from the research project we fund is now mandatory. And since this year, the implementation of a data management plan is requested, and the model is the model that has been defined, discussed, and established in the framework of Science Europe. But of course, beyond open science, the question of open data is a major issue for the next future, and this will have an impact on evaluation of research. As many we have signed the San Francisco Declaration on Research Evaluation, and all our processes are ISO 9001 certified. But this can have an impact also on the launching of cooperation between research agencies. Our main funding instrument goes 80% goes to collaborative research projects at the national level or international, and some individual projects, mainly supporting young researchers. We support about 300 young scientists every year to help them to create and develop their own research team. In terms of international cooperation, our objectives are, on one hand, to participate in the building of the European research area. And again, Dr. Valkarova remind the issue and the importance of Europe for us. It's to increase the excellence, competitiveness, attractiveness, and the impact of, maybe it's selfish, but it's a reality, to impact the impact of French research at European and international level. It's to be involved and to contribute to global response to major societal and global issues such as climate change, food security, health, aging, and so on, and to build strategic partnership over time on a long-term period basis. As you can see, the vast majority of the partnership as with European countries, with several instruments supported by the European Commission or by national research funding agency to help the building of this European research area. And outside Europe, North America on one hand, and Asia on the other hand, each representing about 30% of our international partnership. So in number of project, Asia, it's about 280, yes. And you can see that the partnership between ANR and Taiwan, I told you it was the first international partnership of ANR. And you can see that it represents about more than 70 projects. So it's 70 over 280 in Asia. So you can see that Taiwan is a major partner for us. And the history began 1 year after the creation of ANR with a visit of former Minister Chen from NSC to ANR. And both organizations very rapidly could agree to experiment a pilot flexible scheme to offer to French and Taiwanese world-class scientists funding for research projects open in all areas of science. And that's quite new at this time, at least for French scientists. This instrument provided something new for research communities, since most of the existing schemes offer mobility for PhD of postdoc, but not a full collaborative project funding. This scheme is still ongoing, and we think that it is a real success. So we extended this scheme to more than 10 other countries today. And it's a very selective program. What we want is to fund newly integrated joint research project presenting both international added value with equivalent scientific and funding contribution of both countries. And this joint research project between MOST and ANR offered possibility to more than 230 partners from both countries to strengthen and deepen existing contact, or to develop, to really create new partnership. The scope of funded project is rather broad, ranging from physics, engineering, biology and health, environment, uh, digital technology, to social science and humanity. And the type of funded project is as well as very basic science to long-term application-driven research and some public-private partnership. The first joint workshop was in Taipei in 2011. The second one was in Paris in 2014. And last year, we had the third joint workshop in Taipei during the France-Taiwan Science Festival, together with the French Academy of Science. And each of these events bring together about 20 to 25 joint projects and about 80 to 90 participants. We have carried out a first bibliographic analysis of the scientific production. And with three corpus: the publication co-authored by a French institution and a Taiwanese institution, then publications that refer to ANR, that has been funded by ANR, but that were co-signed by research from a Taiwanese and French institution, and then those that explicitly refer to the most ANR agreement. So I will not have time to detail, but what we can say, it's first, France has a long tradition of partnership with Taiwan in the field of physics, particle physics, astrophysics. But it's interesting to note that the ANR MOST partnership has enabled the emergence of new areas of cooperation. Second point, there is very good and interesting results. For some example, beyond Neptune, based on the stellar occultation technique, which allows the measurement of Neptune satellites. Biodiversity of reef forming algae in the Western Pacific Ocean. Imaging of diagnostic and of chronic kidney disease. And self-assembly of sugar polymers for transistor memory device, which have received the two PIs, received last year the French Taiwanese Academy of Science prize. So just to conclude, the partnership, to be successful, has to be based on a long-term investment from both institutions. It has to be strongly supported also at the institutional level. I think that we share with most common values and a common vision for the benefit of science and innovation. And it has to rely on a mutual trust. Last point, the cooperation between ANR and MOST has facilitated the integration in larger international networks and programs. ANR MOST projects serve as a stone for launching larger international projects where French and Taiwanese partners constitute the heart of the cooperation in the framework of the Belmont Forum, of some arenas in the field of water resource management, sustainable urbanization. So I want really to thank MOST and for its wonderful organization, as always, for this warm hospitality. And I think I'm just in time. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Damehaval. So let me introduce the third speaker, Dr. Yongheng Wang, President, National Applied Research Laboratory, NALAB, Taiwan. So President Wang is currently a distinguished professor with the Institute of Microelectronics, right? Okay, yeah. And he joined AT&T Bell Laboratory in earlier stage in post-doctor, yeah. He served as the chairman of the Department of Electronic Engineering, National Cheng Kung University in 1996. So he joined National Applied Research Laboratory in 2007. 2007, yeah. You know, the NALAB, our National Research Lab, there are 8 national research lab, yeah, including the space, marine, high-speed computing, chip design, etc. So he can expand for you, introduce to us. And today he is going to introduce the topic of global research cooperation and networking of Taiwan based on his profession and years of experience. So let's welcome Dr. Yongheng Wang, please.
Thanks for Chairman. Good afternoon. It's my great pleasure to share the result with all of you. This is my outline. I would like to give a very brief introduction about the national policy and open innovation in our labs. According to the strategy blueprint of Taiwan for science and technology, small economy, smart strategy for people-centered sustainable development with open innovation has been set to the aim of the strategy. To achieve this, the science and technology policies are designed with the 4 following guidelines according to the people-centered base. First, consolidate basic research. Second, encourage scientific research applications. Third, tapping into the values of entrepreneurship. And the fourth, integrating the science, technology, and culture for promoting socio-economic development and to create Taiwan's competitive advantages and maintain the leading position in the world. In other words, we need to construct an excellent ecosystems for scientific research and to develop key enable technologies to address the challenges and promote economic development in line with the 4-stage process of science and technology development by grounding basics to encourage all social circles to explore new knowledge and to accumulate innovation capacity in discovery. By developing strengths to identify promising areas for new technologies in development and expanding capacities to solve existing problems and respond to future challenges in delivery. Also, increase values to meet the requirement for socio-economic development in commercialized. With the rapid growth in semiconductor technologies, computing power increased exponentially. The computing power surpassed the mouse brain power in 2015 and is estimated and is estimated to surpass the human brain power in 2025. Given that the science and technology grows in exponential rate, the technology breakthrough are accelerating. There are three disruptive technologies. The first one is mobile internet, automation of knowledge work, and Internet of Things, which will change our world dramatically. Post Moore's law, exponential advance in technology manifests uncertainty in R&D. This will make us face the great challenges. Taiwan is a small country with limited resources, and we have to use the selective area in science and technology topics and to leverage the partners. For the latter, the open innovation may be the better solution for this issue. Throughout recent years, the share of national R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP keep rising, which reflecting that the increasing importance of R&D in national development. With the government support, Taiwan has built advantages such as competitive innovation and venture capital, outstanding STEAM education, top global ICT enterprise, and strong research and development capacities, which have great impact in international cooperation. International science and technology cooperation has long been a priority. This is promoted by the Ministry of Science and Technology most by the following four instruments: bilateral, and multilateral programs, for example, joint research, joint conference, international cooperation in research project, talent exchange, and MAGIC program, which is an add-on project to expand ongoing large international research project to enhance international cooperation. As we have mentioned, the technology exponentially global demographic shift and the phenomena of climate change. Open innovation is the must in the 21st R&D management. In short, we needed to use outside knowledge and expertise to support technology innovation and to reduce the development and innovation gaps. Three challenges for open innovation we now left face are resources sharing in platform, alliance, or collaboration. The second is intangible assets, internet fraud, and the social network. The third is flexibility in organization restructure. Non-labs supervised by the Ministry of Science and Technology most was established in 2003 for the mission to establish the research platform to support academic research, to promote the frontier technology, and to foster high-tech manpower. Now we have 8 research institutes and focus on 4 major areas. The first one is information and communication technology. The second one is earth science and the disaster mitigation. The third one is biomedical technology. Also play the roles of the think tank or most. We have a lot of research platforms in semiconductor, instrument computing, earthquake, animal space, policy, and ocean or marine, such as the satellite or remote sensing, climate investigation, and IC design and application, AI, cloud, high performance computing, research vessel, and so on. Use these platforms, NAHA labs, to serve the academia and the industry. Also to link with the academic research resources and industry application to develop and translate the research result to commercial product and interdisciplinary applications. Now labs with the universities, private sector build the R&D alliance or collaboration network to link with the key foreign R&D institute, research center, or universities with the foreign embassy's assistant in Taiwan by the following means, such as the joint research, talent exchange. Now let's participate in Asia STI Think Tank Network and Sentinel Asia. And it is also promoting the science and technology cooperation with the Asian countries. We have the branch in Thailand to enhance the collaboration with the nearby countries. We also promote the collaboration with the European nations through its national contact point office. Talent is very important to every organization. Talent flow is highly encouraged by the labs to cultivate top performer, to exchange knowledge and technology, also to establish the partnership. Talent flow is carried out by the following channels. The first one is transnational innovation platform between labs and the International R&D Research Institute. Overseas training with a selective member of staff, also through the international conference. Also, the rapid change in technology and the needs in prospective research, flexibility in organization to make the organization more effective and efficient and competitive is very, very important. For example, to have the one-stop service for the semiconductor technologies, we have integrated the two research institute, CIC, Chip Implementation Center, and the National Device Laboratories into the Taiwan Semiconductor Research Institute to have one-stop service. In conclusion, to realize small economy, smart strategy, open innovation, excellent ecosystems, and key enable technology are essential in the age of the exponential advantages in technologies. Taiwan's full support of R&D has conduced to its advantage in science and technology development, which can make significant impact with international cooperation. Talent flow is a way to cultivate top manpower, and it is also a key factor to promote knowledge and technology exchange. Through the resource sharing and technology platforms, non-labs have linked university, private sectors, and other research centers, and have the capability to establish the global R&D alliance with top research institutes. With its sufficient capabilities, non-labs is confident of making considerable contribution and will spare no effort in reaching the goal of global excellence, local impact to boost and widen Taiwan's international competitiveness and global collaboration network. Thank you.
Thank you, President Wang. So let me introduce the next speaker. Okay, we have Professor Francis Separovich. Yeah, okay, the fellow Australian Academy of Science, AAS Australia. So Professor Francis Separovic is a biophysical chemist, and she is currently a secretary of Biophysical Society USA, and she got many awards from the university, from the government, from the research institute, and she also the first female chemist elected to the Australia Academy of Science in 2012. Yes, and she will share his topic of the role of Academy of Science in promoting global research cooperation and networking and Australia perspective. Please, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Dr. Chow. I'm delighted to be here representing the Australian Academy of Science at the 2019 Global Science and Technology Leaders Forum in celebration of 60 years of MOST, or the Ministry of Science and Technology. It is a privilege to be invited to speak in such distinguished company, and I would like to thank the organisers for setting us such an important topic to discuss. So before I start, I just want to tell you a little bit about the Academy of Science. Thank you. So the Academy of Science was established in 1954 as an independent, non-profit organisation of individuals elected for their outstanding contributions to science and research. And so I have a terrible imposter syndrome, so I don't understand how I got elected, but somehow I did. So the Australian Academy of Science champions, celebrates and supports excellence in Australian science, promotes international scientific engagement, builds public awareness and understanding of science, and provides independent, authoritative and influential scientific advice. We currently have about 530 elected fellows from all areas of the physical, biological, mathematical and medical sciences. These fellows occupy positions in universities, research organisations, medical institutes and industry, and contribute to the work of the Academy in their own time on a voluntary basis. In Australia, we also have other academies. You have the Academy of the Humanities, the Social Sciences, Technology and Engineering. In fact, Hugh, the president of the Academy of Technology and Engineering, is speaking in the other room right now, I believe, and a recently established Academy of Health and Medical Sciences. All these academies cooperate through the Australian Council of Learned Academies. So I just wanted to show you a picture of the buildings there. The one on the left is the administrative building, Ian Potter House, and the one on the right, the Shine Dome. If you want to find it when you go to Canberra, you just ask for the UFO building. So I think it's a really stunning, beautiful building surrounded by a moat. So the national academies like ours recognise and promote excellence in science and research, but we also need to engage with society in ways that are productive and beneficial. And the Australian Academy of Science is very proud. Their Facebook page has 2 million likes, so it's really having quite a bit of influence through communicating to the general public. The Academy believes that the purpose of science is to make the world a better place, and that academies of science have the credibility to inform the public and policymakers about problems and potential solutions. Their credibility comes not only from the scientific excellence of their members, but also from their freedom from invested political and commercial interests. The big challenges and opportunities for countries around the world in the 21st century, economic, environmental, scientific, and social, are inherently global in nature, and science has a critical role to play in helping to understand and respond to challenges and realise opportunities. Global research collaborations are more important now than ever. Science is no longer the domain of the individual, as both Alice and Dr. Wang mentioned. In many disciplines, the scale and complexity of modern science means that truly international collaboration efforts are required. Scientific expertise is built on collaboration and networks that require researchers to travel and work with colleagues in other countries throughout their careers. It is for this reason that networking opportunities for young researchers in particular are important. Science is a truly international language that can help bridge social and cultural differences and bring together governments and populations. And I love the way that being a scientist, you can go to any country and talk about your work. You have something in common no matter where you come from. It is this international context that scientific organisations and academies of science work to facilitate bilateral and multilateral research cooperations and also science diplomacy. These organisations also play a valuable role in coordinating the efforts of the world's growing number of scientists and the associated growth in data, information and literature. Owing to our geographical location, Australian scientists have traditionally viewed their international collaborations and partnerships as the lifeblood of their scientific existence. Of course, web-based technologies have made global research and networking easier than ever, but nevertheless, the Academy interacts widely with scientists and officials from other academies of science, research organisations and governments in many countries, in particular to increase awareness of Australia's capabilities in science and technologies and create opportunities to influence and contribute to international research agendas and policy development activities. The Academy's commitment to scientific international engagement is reflected in several of our current and future areas of activity. These include, as Australia's representative on the International Science Council, the ISC, and many of the international scientific unions. The numerous international exchange and research programs the Academy has run over several decades, many on behalf of the Australian government. The broad range of bilateral, multilateral relationships between the Academy and scientific bodies in other countries. Recognising that science is an increasing global endeavour, the Academy's goals in the international area are ensuring that Australian scientific expertise and leadership contribute to both regional and global scientific networks, promoting strategic partnerships between Australian and overseas researchers, and facilitating Australia's access to global science and technology. At a regional level, the Academy represents Australia on the executive boards of the Association of Academies and Societies of Sciences in Asia and the International Science Council's Regional Committee for Asia and the Pacific. In fact, I'm going to a meeting next week in Kuala Lumpur for that particular committee. We're engaging more and more with our neighbours in the Oceania region by providing annual travel grants to early career researchers in the Asia Pacific region to attend networking events in Australia, and by expanding the scope of discipline strategic plans to include capacity building and information exchange in the region. We also manage on behalf of the Australian Government several mobility and fellowship programs for young scientists to countries like Japan, India and France, as well as hosting a program of PhD students from Latin American countries to spend 8 weeks in Australia. Every year we send a group of young researchers to participate in the Nobel Laureates meeting held in Lindau in Germany, attended by 30 to 40 Nobel Laureates and 600 young researchers from around the globe. These meetings foster the exchange among scientists of different generations, cultures and disciplines over a 1-week period of program of activities. These mobility programs provide opportunities for young researchers to establish and develop collaborations with overseas colleagues on international projects, strengthen strategic institutional links, and provide access to facilities and training techniques that will advance science in their countries of origin. I would like to mention some initiatives that the Australian Academy has embarked upon to grow and maintain a talented pool of researchers and professionals in STEM disciplines. I probably don't have to remind you that stands for science, technology, engineering and mathematics. I have to remind myself. And to encourage girls to embrace the challenges and the opportunities of STEM at school or university in their careers. The Academy supports an active, vibrant and influential early and mid-career researcher community, which includes supporting the EMCR Forum. This is a key strategic activity and underpins its commitment to support diversity and excellence in science and empower the next generation of scientists. And in fact, a representative from the Early Mid-Career Forum sits on all the Academy committees, so we make sure that we hear the young voices as well. The EMCR Forum is the national voice of Australia's emerging scientists, representing researchers who are up to 15 years post-PhD, irrespective of their professional appointment or their discipline of research. The forum's mission is to champion improvement in the national research environment through advocacy. The EMCR Forum provides a vital connection between Australia's most eminent scientists and tomorrow's future scientific leaders. It has over 4,600 members from all around Australia. Main areas of focus for the forum are sustainable and transparent career structures, gender equity, stable funding policies, career development opportunities, and raising awareness of issues facing the future of science. The EMCR Forum will hold its 6th national conference, Science Pathways 2020 Global Dialogues, in July 2020 in Melbourne. Attendees will explore how research and researchers across international boundaries can contribute to and lead global efforts in tackling society's greatest challenges. Through engagement with international partner organisations such as the Global Young Academy, Science Pathways 2020 will provide the platform for Australia's EMCRs to discuss, debate and plan their careers in the global context. As we move into a more technology-based and innovative future, the need and demand for individuals, both men and women, with STEM-based skills is critical. So I was pleased to hear Thierry mentioning gender equity as well. Studies show that women researchers are squeezed out of science careers by structural barriers. The loss of such expertise is a significant waste of knowledge, talent, and investment. Gender equity and gender diversity impact on the scientific performance and productivity of any nation. And we know that diverse teams are better teams and produce better results. A few years ago, the Academy, together with the Australian Academy of Technology and Engineering, established the Science in Australia Gender Equity, or SAGE, initiative to improve gender equity in STEM in the Australian higher education and research sector by building a sustainable and adaptable UK Athena Swan model for Australia. So the UK has the Athena Swan model, so we adapted that to our particular country. The SAGE initiative centres on 3 integral elements. 1, piloting and assessing the Athena Swan accreditation framework in Australia and a focus on getting bronze awards. There's bronze, silver and gold. We've only had bronze at this stage. And supporting higher education and public research institutions to engage successfully with the program. Secondly, raising awareness of gender equity and diversity issues in STEM M, where we include the medical sciences. And thirdly, collaborating with like-minded institutions to promote and support initiatives aimed at encouraging women, trans and gender diverse people to participate in STEM M to address systemic barriers to equity. So currently 80% of universities in Australia are now members of SAGE. Canada, Japan and Chile have been looking at it to try and replicate similar programs in their countries. We've also brought about the Women in STEM Decadal Plan, which is available. I've got the web link up there. So in April 2019, the Academy launched the Women in STEM Decadal Plan in collaboration with the Australian Academy of Technology and Engineering. The plan, sponsored by the Australian Government, provides a 10-year roadmap for achieving sustained increases in women's STEM participation and retention from school through to careers. Action is being taken by Women in STEM Decadal Plan champions. Many of the champions are men, and who have agreed to publicly align their gender equity journey with the Decadal Plan. So also launched in just recently in August 2019, the STEM Women is shown here. Here's a website, which is a dynamic curated online directory of 2,000 Australian women. When it was first put up, they got 200 of us to apply, were invited to apply. And when it went up, within a few weeks, it jumped to 2,000. So the women are proud of who they are. They're putting up the diversity and their different careers. And it's a database to provide speakers, to provide experts and role models. So I will end my remarks here. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about the activities of the Australian Academy of Science and the importance of international research collaboration. I look forward to hearing from the other speakers about their experience and congratulate the Ministry of Science and Technology on their 60th anniversary. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Professor Separovich. Okay, so let me introduce the next speaker, Dr. Georg Schneid. Yeah, please have a seat. I should introduce you first. So Dr. Georg Schneid, Head of International Affairs, German Research Foundation, DFG. Yeah, and his expertise is in microbiome. So in 1992, he established and headed the German National Contact Point for European Research Framework Program, yeah, EU program, and on the researchers' mobility, socio-economic and international cooperation, and became advisor to the BNBF. And he joined the DFG in 2003. So Dr. Georg Schneid will give us a speech about the crucial role of research funding organization. So please, welcome.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction. Let me start by congratulating MOST for successfully becoming 60, which is not always easy. I know that because I also became 60 this year. Hard work. Let me make this a kind of advertisement block. Since I had my birthday, I had a birthday wish, which is to establish multilateral research funding worldwide, and wherever I can advertise that, and this is what I'm doing now here. I'm from the German Research Foundation, which is an organization devoted to basic research, so we don't have research programs, we just fund whatever comes in, if it is good enough for that. So I don't think I have to introduce my organization here. This is all I have to say. Several speakers today already said that research nowadays is far from being unilateral or something you do in your ivory tower. We all know that there's an increasing need for researchers to cooperate, to seek for the best partners possible, which are usually or very often not in your own country, but somewhere else. So you look for them, you try to work together with them. And I'm talking about the crucial role of research funding organizations in that, because working together means you need money, and you need money in a certain way. So research funding organizations play a key role by, first of all, of course, providing money for your joint research, either by defining challenges, put them together into research programs, and then provide money in calls so that you can apply together with your colleagues all over the world to get this money to do your research. They also provide money for unbiased, undirected research, because, of course, we do not know the answers on questions which we don't even know nowadays. So all of us have some kind of curiosity-driven, quality-oriented, blue sky, carte blanche, basic research funding programs, which are very important for generating knowledge for tomorrow. Of course, funding agencies also offer incentive or positive pressures to transfer the knowledge, especially generated by basic researchers, into application, which is not always what basic researchers want to do. They just want to do their research, as you know. And they provide the arena, not platform, the arena for friendly international competition. We all know that competition in research is very important to increase quality of research. But apart from that, providing money, funding organizations also have to provide an international funding framework. It's not so easy to fund together people from different countries. There have to be a lot of conditions clarified, standards set, like what is a peer review, what is good scientific practice, how can we jointly manage projects, and so on. There also needs to be rules for intellectual property rights, for fair partnerships. We have to facilitate networking of scientists worldwide as funding organizations to discuss, set up new projects. And finally, there needs to be a platform for exchange of results, because since the global community of researchers has to improve our global knowledge, they have to know about what's already on the table. That all sounds very logical and easy, but it is not. We have had bilateral research for some decades already, and some of the speakers have already talked about that. So bilateral research is common. It's far from normal. It's far from routine. It's still very difficult to have joint calls, to have joint research funding as a research funding organization, which is living on taxpayers' money. Many rules have to be obeyed, and they have to be standardized. They have to be synchronized if you do bilateral research. And you see here the DFG, although we will be 100 years old next year, have only very few countries where we actually have routinely bilateral calls. There are some other countries where we have unregular bilateral calls, so maybe every other year, or we agree on a new call. But it's, as I said, it's far from being the normal process. There are a few instruments in the world. The ARANETs of the European Commission were already mentioned. This is, it used to be a program where many European countries could work together under a joint funding scheme, and then they could include non-European countries. There are some, various doesn't mean a lot, multilateral funding initiatives in the world, which are usually centered on very stringent topical areas. But if you really want to do research on any topic, you will probably not find a funding agencies consortium which would provide money for more than 2 or 3 of you. So this is what I want to achieve. And I give you 3 examples how this could work within the few minutes I have left. The G8 initiative, the Belmont Forum, which also was mentioned, and the Global Research Council, which, strange enough, was not mentioned yet today. The G8 initiative, in fact, was in 2009 when it was still G8. The Russians were in, but it was only 7 countries because the Italians didn't join. Some of us, and I see Nakita Wachdani here from ANR, one of the driving forces, we had the same narrative as I just said. You don't have to read all that. We had the global problems, challenges, talks. We need cooperation amongst different organizations. So within the G7, G8 context, we just decided, let's try it once. In fact, we tried it 3 times. We decided that each of us 7 organizations put some money into a pot, which was not a common pot. The money was only for one's nationals, but at least we committed some money for that. And then we decided to have 3 calls, 1 in a year. And let's see what comes out if we promise people out there to fund projects which have at least 3 partners from 3 different countries. And to cut a very exciting story, very short, we were able to have 2 successful calls where we funded 8, 9, 10 joint proposals. We had selected topics. One of them was exascale computing. The second was on material sciences. And we found out that there's a huge demand amongst amongst G8 researchers to work together. And we use this as a test bed to find out how this could work as funding agencies. The researchers don't have the problems. They just do their work. But for us to make sure that the money is provided synchronized, that we don't have double or triple jeopardy, only one review process. This was what we practiced, and I think we succeeded. And there's a proof for that, because the 3rd call was not done by us any longer, but it was taken over by the Belmont Forum. And you see, this is an old PowerPoint, one of my colleagues. So they took over in 2012. The 3rd call the G8 people had agreed on was done together with Belmont. And since then, Belmont uses what we had developed in 2011 for their joint calls. And Belmont, the Belmont Forum is a group of funders, ministries, and non-governmental funding agencies devoted to global change, global challenges. 27 members at the moment out of 23 countries. And again, they don't just want to talk, they want to act, and they act by funding joint research projects, multilateral research projects. And the third, and then I'm coming to the close already, the third example is the Global Research Council. The Global Research Council is not funding research, to start with that. It's an organization, a virtual organization, comprised of about 80 heads of research councils who meet once in a year in May. And the idea is sharing of data, best practices amongst these research funding organizations. There are statutes, and the statutes of the GRC define 6 major purposes of the GRC, and the last one I only want to mention is to explore mechanisms that support the global science enterprise and the worldwide research community. So here we are potentially at joint research funding. Obviously, we don't do that yet. The GRC was only founded in 2012, so it's a young organization, and we are still in the phase where we are exchanging experiences, where we together define standards which are needed in global research funding. And I think this could be one of the one of the next steps, where we agree on again as an experiment fund multilateral research. This is at least my hope. If you are interested in the Global Research Council, there's a webpage. And interestingly, there's not only the May meetings where about 80 heads of research councils meet, and some of them are sitting here in the first row. But there are also 5 regional conferences. Here we have 80. We don't want more heads of research council because otherwise it's already quite difficult to discuss, but more than 80 is impossible. But this May meeting is always prepared by 5 regional meetings, one of them Asia Pacific. And in these 5 regional meetings, many more organizations come together. Whoever is a stakeholder in a given topic. We always discuss certain topics like where should we set standards, where do we need a paper on joint experiences. So whoever is a stakeholder will be invited or could be invited to one of the regional conferences. And these regional conferences regularly look for host countries where these conferences can be hosted. And this is published here on the website. So if anybody here is able to organize a small event where about 40 people maybe are coming together for 2 days, we're always short of hosts. Very important. The major purpose of this annual meeting is, of course, to exchange experiences and to set standards and to have kind of publications on that. So we publish what we agree on, and you can find all the different GRC publications on the website. So what is peer review, gender and research, open access, and so on. There's a governance. It's a virtual organization. We have a governing board consisting of 12 hawks, heads of research councils from all continents. There's an annual meeting, as I said. This was one of these are the hosts of the last meeting, which is DFG and Argentina and Brazil. There is a executive support group, people caring for the GRC, and then there are the 5 regional meetings, always in autumn. And that's enough, I think, for today. I hope for some questions. If you are interested in what DFG is doing, my own organization, German Research Foundation, here are some websites. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Schneid. And okay, let me introduce the last speaker, Dr. Roger Scott Douglas. And Dr. Douglas has a doctorate degree of philosophy from University of Cambridge. And he was assistant secretary of Treasury Board, TBS, and also he has a lot of international experience. So he is work in including OECD, World Bank mission to Europe, India, and Middle East, and he co-chaired the OECD task force on the Observatory on Public Sector Innovation. Okay, so Dr. Scott Douglas will give us a speech of international research and innovation collaboration and networks, NRC perspective. Please.
Thank you so much, Vice Minister Zhao. It's a great honor to be here with such distinguished colleagues on this panel. For my sins, I'm the last speaker at the end of a long day, and I will try my best to hold your attention. Actually, I'm quite used to being in the position of drawing, as we say, a short straw. You mentioned that my PhD is in philosophy, not science. My brother has a PhD in physiology and is a medical doctor specializing in nephrology. I was once introduced with him as Dr. Scott Douglas, and my grandmother, who was there, said, he, unfortunately, is not the kind of doctor who can do you any good. I hope I can take a little bit of time today to speak about the NRC's perspective on international collaboration. But I must start by paying, as other colleagues have done, tribute to the very impressive history of most. Mr. Chang has come to Canada, and we feel ourselves to be very valued partners with Taiwan. The metrics on this slide speak a little bit to that, but really belie the terrible importance of trusting relationships, which we feel that we have with Taiwan, and which we're very honored to enjoy. If you will forgive me, I'll talk just a little bit about the National Research Council of Canada. It is the largest federal science organization in the country. Indeed, we're among the top 5 research organizations in Canada, both public, private, and university researchers. So a significant player with a 103-year history being established as a council to inform government. As Secretary General, I'm very proud to say that I'm actually occupy the office of the longest running office in the National Research Council. Somebody, though, took me down a peg by said that makes me the oldest part of the oldest profession at the NRC, which is a humbling thing. We play 3 key and enduring roles of supporting business innovation by providing funding to innovative SMEs, by providing advice and research to government to prosecute public policy mandates, and an important role in advancing scientific and technological knowledge. Our own statistics speak to a deep and diverse interest. We have 14 research centers at 22 sites across Canada. You'll see on the screen there, it says that our facilities are the equivalent of 354 ice hockey rinks, which seems perhaps an odd boasting point, but you can take some glee in the fact that snow has just come to the Canadian prairies this week, and so that's how we orient ourselves. In the context of international work, we ground ourselves and take feel great importance around a role of connecting and convening. We have international agreements with 34 different countries. We are an adhering member of the International Science Council, and we have 9 new collaborative research and development programs that have an explicit component to them to work with international collaborators on major challenges. And indeed, in the context of Taiwan, we're very proud about our relationship both with the Ministry of Economic Affairs and ITRI and the Taiwan Textiles Research Institute, with Ministry of Science and Technology. Of course, we have relationships with NARL, TSRI, and indeed we, very proud of work with universities as well, and specific academics here in Taiwan. Maybe I could then now just drill down a little more deeply on the topic that we've been asked to speak about. I'm conscious that what I might say is a bold statement of the obvious in some respects, but I do feel at this time where there is greater skepticism about the place of science in society and a certain questioning of evidence-based policy decision-making, not to mention the closing of certain societies, a withdrawal and a retreat from globalization. It's very, very important for all of us in this room and in our organizations to reassert the importance of open and collaborative science and its place. I'll be speaking at the 3,000-foot level, very high and abstract, but I want to drill down in 3 particular areas and then sum up with some general trends that we see. The first is the area of important multilateral relationships. Important, as many of my colleagues have pointed out, the very intricate and close connectedness between our economies. Canada has about 80% of its GDP related to trade. We were part of the world in that regard. There was prohibitive costs for major science infrastructure. Canada is part, for instance, of astronomy observatories in Hawaii and in Chile with partners, which we could never afford to do if we didn't work collaboratively. And what makes those kind of multilateral relationships work is that critical sense of trusted relationships between the players in it, and the as Jörg talked about in the context of research funding organizations, providing that very useful platform for collaboration, which I think is so very important. It's also important for the success of these multilateral partnerships to have joint and committed resources. Long-term stability and predictability are essential there. And then, as is very difficult to do, but absolutely essential, the requirement for open data and open science to the degree that's possible is necessary. It's not easy, though, as other panelists have spoken about, and there's rising costs of doing these major multilateral scientific things, mitigated by the need to be very well organized, plan, and act quickly. And every year lost is a significant increase in costs. It's very challenging with the changing of governments, with the changing of priorities, to have predictability over the long term. And that's very important as well, to ensure that there is the need for the right kind of planning horizons to be a part of these multilateral partnerships. And then, so very important throughout, to ensure the continued alignment of priorities to avoid the separating of partners. In the second area I'd like to highlight is bilateral partnerships. These are terribly important as well in their own right. The requirement for science to take place over the longer term, and that close pairing of where one party has expertise and leadership, where with complementary skills from others, absolutely essential element of bilateral partnerships and their importance. The second one is that there's a great merit in bilateral relationships to bringing together and aligning research activities so that you get the necessary critical mass. We often individually don't have the sufficient critical mass required to be successful. This is another important aspect of bilateral relationships. And then, of course, this has been said by almost everybody and is worthy of underscoring again, these wicked problems that we face require people to come together to tackle them together. What are the necessary conditions for some of these bilateral relationships? Again, as with multilateral relationships, I put right at the top of the list the trust that needs to exist, trust that comes with sustained and frequent interactions. A bilateral relationship that's left to go fallow and is untended doesn't tend to last very long. A second relationship aligned with trust is the requirement in a bilateral relationship for openness and candor and that kind of honest exchange of ideas. Again, not very easy. Diplomacy is often required to manage that. And then the third point I would draw out, as has been evidenced today, bilateral relationships almost always are better if they're started at the individual researcher and then built around. If you create a framework and then try and fill it with researchers, it almost never works as successfully as building on individual research relationships. So I would point that out. There are, though, of course, risks that need to be mitigated. It's very hard to maintain those commitments over the long term, and a key point there is necessarily to continue that close relationship, and then, of course, to avoid becoming unaware of the need for one or other of the partnerships to adjust and change their priorities in light of changing circumstances, and that requires that open communication. The third area I'll touch on very briefly is the importance of these, what I call international platforms, the kind of structures that allow many parties to come together. These global platforms, in this case, I'm calling out the Eureka platform of 40 countries. Canada is very proud to be a part of that, and I know that other non-European countries are as well. These are very important for de-risking. And getting an increased portfolio of activity. That's a very important part of platforms. And then secondly, of course, and importantly, as others have spoken about, is attaching individuals, in the case of Eureka, firms to global value chains. That's a very important part. The ingredients there, of course, though, the first important thing for these to be successful is that you actually have the appropriate pairing, that you don't try and force together incompatible groups. That's often a risk, and it's very important to get the right pairing between these two, and ensuring in that context as well that you're sufficiently client-centered to ensure that the focus is on the right thing, and platforms allow us to do that. The biggest risk with these international platforms, in my experience, has been the risk of inefficiency, of prolonged kind of bureaucratic rule setting can often take hold, and you have to really guard against that in this thing. I'm going to come back to this point of platforms in just a minute, and we'll do so in kind of summing up what I see as some of the key trends on all three of the aspects of international engagement that I've spoken about. The first is, I think that, as indeed Alice started us off, we're moving from individual partnerships to ecosystem linkages. And in particular, what I mean by that is that that in the past you had researcher to researcher or academic institution to academic institution. The future is bringing together academics with government labs and with industry. I think that that's going to be an increasing trend that characterizes international engagements going forward. The second one is, and this will be difficult, let's be honest, moving though to much more open innovation. The dominance of closed, of protecting intellectual property, of thinking first and foremost of smaller communities, close kin, is going to have to be replaced with more open innovation. And this will be more easily done, obviously, in the pre-competitive areas and collaboration there. But this is what I see as a general trend. The third one is that, and this is very welcome, moving to a real global scale and moving out of a Eurocentric model that has characterized some of the international trends in the past, and to international platforms that draw from the talent, from the diversity, and from the richness there. And in that context, I would like to call out the move in the research and technology organization space, where ERTO, the European Research and Technology Association, has brought in associate members from around the world. We're looking forward. Canada has been honored to be asked to work with others on setting up a research technology innovation international network. We've got half a dozen or so countries that are joining the 25 or so European countries. We're going to expand that, and we're very honored that Executive Vice President Dr. Chang from ITRI has taken up a role there, and we're looking forward to working with Taiwan and others as we go forward on what we're calling RIN. Then just to very quickly conclude, I think that one of the trends is ensuring that we peg ambition for international collaboration at the right level. And it has to be sufficiently ambitious to be motivating, but not so much so that we will never achieve it in time to validate and justify and keep all of the people committed to it. So doability is a key aspect for what we're doing. And then the final point that I would point out is the need to ensure that in structuring international engagement relationships, the platforms that we've talked about, that we allow a clarity of roles, clarity of responsibilities in these organizations, to be sure, but what I've called, stealing from European colleagues, variable geometry must characterize these things. By that I mean that we need to to be fit for purpose. We need to mix and match. We need to have sufficient degrees of differences in our relationships to accommodate the different needs, the different values, the different ways in which people work. If we try and be too homogeneous and too forced, that won't work. And we need to be sufficiently creative in our international engagement for success. So with that, I'd like to end and thank all of you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Roger. I try to remember. Scott Douglas. Yeah. You know, there is an old saying. We said technology comes from humanity and philosophy. So you can see our speaker, we have natural science, we have engineering, we have life science, we also have social science and philosophy. So including all the research field. So now the time to the panel discussion. So I would like to invite the older speaker come to the front table. Yeah, please. So we will have 10 minutes. Yeah, open for all the participants. Yeah, please. So here, yeah. Okay, first of all. So any suggestion, any comments, any new idea, we are very welcome. So please. We still have time. Yeah. Okay, please.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much for your very, good inspiration to us. So actually, yes, I I can see the very familiar faces over there. So I'm from the Japan Science and Technology Agency, and my question is, okay, the Dr. Doberba from ANR and Dr. Separovich from Australia mentioned about the importance of diversity. I mean, how to involve the women in science. So I remember the Dr. Domerber mentioned about action plan to to improve the situation of the gender equality in the science and science and research, and also the Dr. Separovich mentioned about how to involve the women researchers in the research activities in Australia. So the reason why I'm asking this question is, Japan is very famous for it's not so, diverse in terms of the, gender equality. So, like as far as I remember, maybe less than 20%, less than 10% of the researchers are women in Japan. So, can I get some advice how we can improve this situation in Japan? Thank you very much.
No? Oh, it's come on. I'm just impatient, and I'm impatient for gender equity as well. I'd just like to say that since the 70s in Australia, for example, in chemistry, we've had 50% female students, and we're up to about 12 to 15% women professors of chemistry, which is just too slow. And people say, oh, it's a leaky pipeline, it's a trouble, it will eventually catch up. It doesn't catch up. I think we need a change of culture, and I think we have to accept different styles of leadership. For me, I'm tired of being told to be more assertive, to be more self-confident. I'm not going to change. I want you to encourage me, and I want to encourage others. I'll tell you some of the things that we have been doing in Australia. We do have male champions of change. We have pledges. You've heard about Francis Collins taking the pledge, not participating in panels, or manels as we call them, panels which are all male. So we're also doing this where we're having people from the academy taking a pledge so that whenever we accept a talk, we will say that we would like to see your diversity policy. We have schemes where conferences only get funding, outside funding from certain organizations if the conference also pledges gender equity. So I'm a little bit of a troublemaker. For example, sometimes I see a conference and other women are more junior and they are not brave enough or they're afraid of consequences. So they tell me to complain. And so what I did recently, and I often do this, I'll see a conference where all the speakers are male and I'll ask if females are welcome, and they'll write back to me and say, yes, almost half of our participants are female. And yet they don't see that their speakers are not. And I think we have to have different types of speakers, young and old, but each culture is different, and some cultures prefer to see older people talking. I prefer to see a mixture of people and lots of role models. At the University of Melbourne, we're doing things like, for example, in chemistry, we had 4 appointments and we said 2 of them must be women. And so we're actually saying we will appoint. Physics is now doing that. Maths actually did 3 appointments, females only, and it does cause problems. People see it as discrimination, but I think for the good of society, I think we need different styles of leadership. We need to encourage people to be nice to one another as well. And I think women tend to do that. Sometimes we talk too much, as I'm doing now, but it's good to hear other voices. So, Thierry, did you want to make a comment?
Thank you. I will not give advice because we are far from being perfect, and just a few words. In France, and I think it's the same in Europe, women represent 30% of scientists. A few years ago, when we look at the ANR, less women were submitted projects. Now we are at the same level, 30%, and also 30% of funded project. So that's the first step. And which is interesting, it's when we look at the young scientists, the specific program from young scientists, it's 38% women. So it's improving. There is some specific action for that. We have a specific training for committees and chairmen or chairwomen of the scientific committees. We have a specific for CV, something which is new but very simple. It's just a possibility for a man as well for a woman to tell, I've interrupted my career during 1 year or 2 years because I had to my children. So it's now really clear, and it's not. And we are involved in 2 European projects dedicated to gender. One is Gender Plus. It's to take into account in research projects the gender matter. Of course, it's clear in biology, in social sciences, but I was telling in artificial intelligence, it's more and more important. And the second project is called Gender Smart. It's for the evaluation of research project and to avoid biases in the evaluation of research project. So we are far from being perfect, but it's really a priority, and things are improving, I think.
Dr. Georg Schönert, please.
Thank you. This is not an answer to Dr. Kobayashi's question because you know what I'm going to say now. The Global Research Council has a working group on gender in research, and there's a paper published on the website of the Global Research Council, which is globalresearchcouncil.org. And this working group is preparing a survey amongst research funding organizations to see what they are doing to list good practice examples and hopefully to come further with this extremely important but very retarded problem solving.
Douglas, please.
The National Research Council is very proud of the fact we've reached 100% 50-50 gender equity as an overall organization, and very embarrassed to say that we haven't fully achieved it within STEM. We have a long way to go, but there are three things that I might pass on to you. The first is that making very clear that it's not in any way a requirement to reduce the importance of merit and of excellence in achieving those kind of goals. It is not a sacrifice. You can have both. And in particular, women scientists in the National Research Council have reiterated that they don't want to be characterized in any way as having got there with anything other than the same excellence as their male counterparts. The second is that there are very strong arguments for fairness that come into play, but there are equally strong arguments for performance, that from diversity you get better performance, both in science and in organizational behavior. That's a very strong argument, and there's a lot of evidence to back that up. That's an evidence-based statement that you can find. And the third advice is unrelenting commitment to it. You cannot stop focusing on it. And here, picking up on Francis's point, it's as important that men are as worried about this issue as women.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Okay, from Japan. Yeah. Okay. Any question? Any suggestion? Yeah, please, over there, young lady.
I have a question on commercialization. In your respective countries, how do you integrate academia, government, and industry for commercialization of technologies or research results? I mean, does commercialization of research results and technologies come very naturally, or does the government have to step in to encourage, or does the industry are the industry very actively pushing for this? This is my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schönheit, please.
Thank you for this question. There are three major ways in Germany. First of all, German industry, which provides about 75-80% of the money for research and innovation within the German system. No, sorry, it provides about two-thirds of the money. Actively cooperate with universities. So, for example, my son and my daughter both do a PhD, and both are funded by industry. So this is a very important way industry has to get involved. They have to take the responsibility. Secondly, the German government runs specific programs where they try to twin industry, especially small and medium-sized companies, which is the backbone of the German economy, and university or external university research institutes. So programs which bring them together and catalyze transfer of knowledge. And third, we have one research organization, the Fraunhofer Association, which is devoted to transfer results into industrial usage. And they have a very interesting funding scheme. They receive 30% of their basic funding from the state only if they can prove that they earned 30% from competitive programs and 40% of industry. So every year they have to show that the year before or the 2 years before they earned from competitive funding and industry. Otherwise, institutes will be closed. And institutes are closed, so there is pressure on them. It works.
I'll make a comment. Australia is not that well known for that type of behaviour, but the Australian Research Council is devoting more and more of its money. It's taking money from the basic and putting it into the applied sciences. And the linkage scheme involves companies participating with research institutes and universities. And the success rate for those types of grants are much higher than what they are for the basic research. So I was quite pleased to hear the Minister this morning say that basic research is very important, and also that human resources. So we have to be very careful about how we do that, but the government is doing it by giving more money towards applied research and more money towards partnerships.
No, just in France, we are not very good in transfer technology and innovation. So when you are not very good, we look what your neighbor are doing. And in 2006, the government decided to create something quite similar to Fraunhofer, which is called Carnot. And now and I just want to say that it's really efficient. And now we have 17% of the public research, which has this labeled Carnot, 17%, and it represents 50% of the private investment in academic research. So just to say that you have very good example.
I was actually going to say that we're trying to be like Germany too. Uh, but we face in Canada two significant problems: massive investment, particularly since 1996, in advanced research, increase in funding of about 289%, and we've had very significant achievements in the publication of papers and so forth, but very little um, has translated directly into commercialization and innovation through that. So a few things that we're trying to do. One is increase a sense of entrepreneurship within academic, and there are certain Canadian universities that have a great number of spin-offs and things that are achieved by their academics bringing products to commercialization. Even in the area of quantum, for instance, who one would never imagine, but there big emphasis being there. The second dimension is more collaborative programming, where you funding councils link up academics with businesses, and there's a 2+2 formula to work more collaboratively. So incenting it that way. The second big challenge that we face beyond knowledge transfer is technology adoption by SMEs, and so we're trying to reduce the barriers, de-risk that, encouragement of even in leading edge sectors, the reluctance of Canadian companies to adopt technology. So we're de-risking that with subsidies, and also improving accessibility and pathfinding, so that people, SMEs, are led to the right kind of technology and providing platforms.
So we are also neighbors, but we are very far to be so good as in Germany. I must mention that we are the agency which is supporting only basic research, but we have also technological agency which supports application and innovations. And so I think that they just now started to do some actions to be to extend their possibilities and to be better in this sense. So.
Thank you. Okay, please. Do we still have time?
Hello, just a very short question from me. Anna Platter, Polish Academy of Sciences. I have a question to Dr. Scott Douglas. In your presentation on excellent presentation, you mentioned on your last slide the current trends in science and science management. And on the first bullet point, you mentioned that we are going through a shift from individual partnerships towards open ecosystems. In very concrete terms, would that mean a decline of bilateral partnerships, or you think that it's going to be still on the table and it's not going to influence bilateral partnerships? Thank you.
That's a fascinating question. One I don't know that I really have evidence to say one way or the other. I do know that a number of organizations are reducing their bilateral efforts and moving more to multilateral. That is a trend I've seen. But I do feel that what will happen perhaps is that although bilateral relationships might reduce in number, they will increase in depth and degree of collaboration, if you know what I mean. That you will get perhaps fewer but deeper and more extensive individual relationships. That's what I anticipate for some of the reasons that I gave about why we need them in the first place.
Okay, so the good memorandum have to control the time because this section scheduled is 5:50. Now it's 5:40, right? So, so we have to. Is anyone? Okay, okay, okay. So, the conference arranged a welcome party at 6 p.m. Hosted by our minister Chen Liangji. So at the welcome party, we still have time to communicate each other. So now we have to come to the end. Okay, we have to start here. So, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, our distinguished panelists for your excellent speech, and thank you all the participants joined us, and we also thanks for the Working College, National Taiwan University, the Gazette, for their efforts and arrangement. So, wish our meeting a complete success, and every one of your best of health and good luck. Thank you, everyone.
So before announcing the end of the panel session, we still need to take a group photo. So please